Hey Jolene, how's life?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm looking at your bookshelf because every time I go into somebody's house and everyone's got books, right? There's always one book, at least one book that I've got.
Yeah. What do you see? Anything that piques your interest?
I don't know. It's too far away from me, but I bet there's something. Is that the Course in Miracles in the background there?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
there
I
you
do.
are.
I
There
do
you
have
are.
that. I do have
Spotted
that.
it. Got the
You know,
Course in
I
Miracles.
I moved into this place 6 months ago, and I'm such a book lover, and I gave away like 5 bags to a used bookstore because
Yeah.
I have so many. It's too many books, but
I did the same. I gave away all my fiction and I gave away all the books that I was never going to go back to again as a reference tool. Yeah, I've still got a ton of the things. I don't know. I like paper books, but I do like the Kindle as well. I like the, it's almost kind of addictive, right? As soon as you read a book or you don't like the first chapter, just get another one for $5. I mean, it's fantastic, isn't it?
yeah, that's what I do.
Fantastic.
I do a lot of Kindle now. I prefer paper books.
Hmm.
But I mean, my reference research books, I do buy, but just fiction reading, I do a lot on the Kindle.
Yeah, same here. So I was listening to your podcast the other day. I love it. I think it's fantastic. There's not enough good quality sobriety podcasts out there, so it'll be my pleasure to link to it and send my listeners over there because I think you're doing a really good job over there. And I was listening to your story as I was walking around in the 100-degree heat, trying not to kill myself. But people haven't listened to it probably. Just give us a kind of a nutshell view about your decision to quit and what you mean by the early exit.
Yeah, so the podcast is called Editing Our Drinking and Our Lives, and I co-host with Aidan Donnelly Rowley. She's in New York City. I'm here in Denver, Colorado. And she and I have similar stories in some ways, but also different. And we talk about this idea of this gray area of drinking, where we both very much identify with that. There's this big spectrum of drinkers. What we might call kind of normal, healthy drinking, and then end stage, park bench, lost everything drinkers. And that's always, I think, how we've thought of that culturally and as a society. But the unexposed conversation, what we haven't been talking about, is this gray area. So there's this whole area in between, air quote, normal drinking and end stage, just lose everything kind of drinking. And that's certainly, the type of drinker I was. I have worked in corporate wellness. I'm a functional nutritionist and a health coach, also a yoga instructor, and been working in wellness for 13 years and teaching companies and working with individuals. And I drank red wine and fit in socially, with my friends, with people that I would hang out with. But it was becoming more and more of a habitual thing for me, a coping mechanism. And I wasn't actually a big drinker in high school and college, but my story really is much more of an anxiety story. And because of the anxiety, the kind of the connection and the outer manifestation of that was alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And it really was increasing in my late 30s, early 40s. It was very easy for me to be, work, come home. I'd be traveling and go out on the expense account, say, I'm going to have a glass of wine. Oh, screw it. I'll order another glass. And before I knew it, I drink the bottle. And that was becoming really easy for me to do, which was also scaring me and worrying me, especially somebody with anxiety and kind of a hypochondriac, knowing some of the health connections with that. And so I've been speaking out about it much, much more. And I've said as part of my story, a lot of my drinking was alone. After work at home, I was out with friends, but what people didn't know was often I might have a couple drinks with friends, stop somewhere on the way home, or come home and have a couple more drinks. And I was never a big volume drinker, but when I really started to add it up, because my drinking would look like maybe one night I'd have 2 or 3 drinks, the next night I wouldn't drink, 2 nights later I'd have a bottle. But when I added all that up, it was easily 4 bottles a week, which for some people that might sound like a lot. For some people they're like, that's nothing. But for me, adding it up, in a month's time, 16 bottles of wine on a really consistent basis, month after month, and how easy that was becoming. I did a lot of back and forth. I would have times where I would stop for a couple weeks, couple months, but I just got to a point in 2014 where I knew I don't want to keep doing this merry-go-round of stopping and then thinking I can drink socially, I want to drink again. And it would go right back into that escalated, I'm drinking more than I want to. And I wanted to get off of that merry-go-round and made the decision, a very resolute commitment to stop drinking December 14th, 2014.
December 14th, 2014. Congratulations. I have a couple of questions that pop into my mind out of that, or observations as well as questions. When you said then that you used to drink 4 bottles of wine a week and then added on the end, some people might think that that's a lot, some people might not. Do you do that consciously? Because I know that when I quit drinking alcohol and I started interviewing people on this podcast, there was a little bit of me, which was like a little bit of imposter syndrome. I was like, hang on a minute. I don't think I've got a problem. This guy's drinking more in an hour than I drink in a week, And I think what I've learned, I don't know if it's the same with you, Jolene, it is not how much we were drinking. So if you're listening to this, folks, it's not how much you're drinking. This isn't a game where we compare how many bottles we're putting out for the trash man on a weekly basis. It's how it's making you feel. So you could just drink a glass of wine a night, but you could be thinking to yourself, this doesn't feel right. Or you could be drinking a bottle of wine a week thinking, this feels cool. It's about how you feel. Would you say that's about right, Jolene?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I do tend to still put that qualifier on because I find when I talk with different people, I can get that response of like, really? Well, and you're putting yourself in the category of having a problem. Yeah, I am. It was a problem for me. And then I can also talk with other people who are like, that's nothing, that's, so I will qualify it. But I agree with you for me, it was a problem. It absolutely was a problem with how I felt, how it was affecting me. Actually, even what I would hide more than what I was drinking was how I felt the next day. Because I would always feel so queasy and so nauseous, and I would hide that more. And, for me, of kind of like, the why I was drinking and the effect of it, it was absolutely for the effect. Absolutely. My anxious mind, my ruminating mind, how did that presentation go today? Why didn't that guy call me back? What are they thinking? What's happening? Should I have done this? It was just that constant, that's my anxious mind. And a glass of wine just shuts it off. And that's why I drank. It wasn't really for me about social drinking or events or that kind of thing, like that social lubricant. It was to shut down my anxious mind. And I knew I was getting into deep waters and a slippery slope because I wanted that effect.
How influential was your values in all of this and your life orientation? So even while you're drinking, you're interested in working in the nutrition and wellness industry, yet you're drinking alcohol. And I know when I quit drinking alcohol, eating sugar was a problem for me because I felt like I was being a hypocrite. I was like, how can I stop this poison coming into my body, but I'm just shoving this poison into my body? I need to be, I'm not okay with this, right? So how much did that influence you, that you was in the wellness industry and you were drinking wine, which is, when you break it down, it's ethanol, which is a poison. Did that have a big impact on you?
Yeah, there was a real misalignment with that, and talking about what nourishing our bodies and nourishing our life, because I've always and still do believe that it's much bigger than just eating right and exercise. Of course, we want to eat good food and move our body, but it's bigger than that. What nourishes us, as far as relationships and relaxation and leisure and play and the spiritual side of things and our work and our purpose. And alcohol wasn't nourishing to me. And so there was that misalignment that was, like I said, it was getting easier and easier and a really frequent, habitual thing for me. And that misalignment was just in my face more and more, where I knew I want to do a hard stop, and I'm ready to do a hard stop.
There's a trick that you can use if you're listening to this, folks. If you think about the logic behind that, so if you're in a relationship where everyone around you is drinking beer, smoking pot, whatever, it's party house, right? You've got a job which you don't really like. You're not really cared about it. I don't know. Let's say you're a plumber or whatever. No disgrace to plumbers around the world, right? But let's say you're a plumber. You don't really like your job, whatever. And you're surrounded by your mates, going down a pub and all that kind of stuff, right? One way of attacking this problem is to ignore the alcohol and just focus on your life. And just, if you get more into wellness, so like, let's say you got a meditation class, then you got a yoga class, and then you decide that you're going to do a little bit of service or something, or start to eat a little bit healthier. At the moment, we still haven't mentioned alcohol, right? You might get into Buddhism or something, whatever it is, but sooner or later, what you're getting into, there's no room for alcohol in it. So you will start to feel, oh, this isn't fit. Like you said, Jolene, you're into wellness and nutrition, but this is not nutritional. This is not making you feel right. So this is something that people can do. And I know I've given that advice to people before. Don't focus on the alcohol because you can get consumed by it. It's like, oh no, this is a big fight with alcohol. I don't think I can win it. Okay, well, let's focus on doing something else more positive. What else in your life is not going well that we can focus on and fix and improve? And, do you have any comments on that at all?
Yeah, I mean, that's, some of the behavior psychology of any time we focus on deprivation or what we can't have, we want it more. And so switching that on what can we have? What can we add in? What can we expand? And I do that with a wellness wheel that I've taught for many years in corporate wellness, of looking at nutrition and emotions and exercise and these different areas. And instead of thinking, take away, can't have to stop something, what can you add into these areas? Exactly what you're saying. And we can even take the nutrition metaphor in kind of that question of, does this feed me? Does this nourish me? Does this fortify me? In any area, whether it's like what we're spending our money on, or who we're spending time with, or what environments we're in, is this nourishing? And so then it's not like I'm being punished or deprived because I'm not having alcohol. It's more, I'm turning the question of, does this nourish me with what I want to kind of build and create in my life?
That what you said there reminded me of a great book I read called Your Money or Your Life by Vicky Robin and
I've got it right back here.
Where they use life energy as a comparison to how much money you're spending. So if I'm going to spend this amount of money on red wine, a bottle of red wine, then that means you're giving up X amount of minutes or hours of your life. And I found that really powerful. Like, I always struggle with the money side of things, but the way that they did that, I thought it was amazing. I'll put a link to that book, actually. One of the greatest books I've ever read, actually. I agree. It's great. I actually just taught a financial wellness class with a law firm a couple of days ago. Wow. And I put that as one of the resources. Oh, yeah. That's fine. Finance and wellness. Wow. Can't get better than that. I was listening to your podcast the other day, and you said to Aidan, but I really loved red wine. So my question is, how do you feel about it now? And if there are still remnants of positivity around it, how do you deal with that? Oh, that's a fun question. So I am, I think, 5 days away from hitting 1,000 days with not a drop, sip, or drink of alcohol. I'm inching up on the 3-year mark. And to answer that question right here, now, in this moment, I don't have the thinking about drinking mind 3 years out. And I believe that's just very much time. Alcohol has not been in my body and brain for 1,000 days. And it just, the neural pathways, a new groove has been set. And I did many stops over the years. There were times I would stop for 6 months. I would stop for 6 weeks. So this wasn't like one day I just woke up and I'm like, oh, I'm going to align my health and quit drinking. This was a real back and forth, silent struggle for me.
So, but what I know from those stops and restarting was I picked right back up. It was like that cellular memory, because I would have these times where I go a couple of weeks and be like, why am I doing this? Like, I can drink socially. I can, I'm not drinking 8-10 drinks at a time. I can have a drink. But my body remembers that kind of that anesthetizing effect. And I had enough experiences with that I know I would go right back to that. And that's why I know it's a problem for me. But like your question of, yeah, I loved red wine. I loved the effect of it. But that memory and kind of that experiential, like, oh, that would be really good. It has left me. But I also know that, no, I cannot have a drink of red wine right now. Where does that put me on the spectrum of, addiction and problem drinking or all of that? I'm on the spectrum. I don't feel like I'm way down at the end, but I'm on that spectrum. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, I did a blog post the other day called The Alcohol Spectrum, where I believe everybody's on it. So
I do too. I think if you drink, you're on the spectrum.
Yeah, Mildred down here has 1 glass a year, and then someone down here is having the DTs if he tries to stop. And we're all on there. And part of the gig here, how we get around this, is by understanding and accepting that. And by doing that, we can take away this pressure that we feel we have a problem. I have a problem, or what I hate, I am an alcoholic, right? No. You're on the spectrum with everybody else. You just drink slightly less than the other guy next to you who's a complete mess, right? That's all it is. It's one of volume, right? Every single human being on this planet, when they close their eyes, when they go to bed, they all have problems. They all have issues. They all can't deal with life. We all need our different tools. But alcohol, yeah, it's so ingrained in our society. You can't get away from it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And, one thing that I didn't really have this clarity. I mean, it wasn't something I kind of dove into and looked at like 5 years ago. But now that I'm speaking and coaching and really in this work around the craving brain, the recommended kind of guideline, if at all, I mean, essentially there's no kind of like, for what is kind of a healthy amount of alcohol, but if we're going to like nail it down, it's 5 ounces of wine for women per day. And right. I mean, 5 ounces, like I wasn't drinking that.
Yeah.
So I think just to know that anything over that on a daily consistent basis, you're on that spectrum. Yeah. And what I saw for myself, and I mean, you can hear this in kind of, addiction circles and AA and that kind of thing, of that it is progressive. And I saw that in myself. Like I would stop and then restart, and I would quickly go kind of at the level that I had stopped at, and how easy it was to kind of escalate. And because I wasn't a daily drinker, but the last year I was, and that things like that were really concerning me. That I wanted to get off the merry-go-round quickly.
Yeah, I totally get it. The more time passes, especially when you're doing the work, I think this is really important as well. You have a choice when you quit drinking alcohol. You can just get on with your life if you want, or you can turn it around and try to help people defeat the beast that you just defeated, right? And that's not for everyone. But I could tell you, for me, and I guess the same for you, Jolene, it doesn't half help. For me now to turn around and start drinking again after building a practice, a community, a pod, it was just never going to happen, right? But I can tell you what Jolene said. I went 4 years sober. Wife divorced me, relapse. Never saw it coming. And the relapse was, I don't give a shit. It was one of those relapses. It was I know everything about alcohol, that I know it offers me no value. I know all this, but I just don't care. Right now, it does offer me a value. I don't care. I want to hurt myself. It's the only value alcohol provides. It hurts you. So if you want to hurt yourself, alcohol will do a very good job at that, right? The speed, Jolene, that I went from drinking, because I then said to myself, well, I can just moderately drink. Boom. I was right back where, no, not right back where I was. I stopped myself before I got there, but it was really quick, because those associations, we'll talk a bit about neuroscience and neuroplasticity, that they very quickly come back. It's like, I think I can't remember where I read this. You can jump in a minute and put me right on this, because I'm no scholar. It might be Charles Duhigg and The Power of Habit. These habits don't go anywhere. It's not like we take them out of our brain, put them in the trash. We just push them out of the way into a darkened cellar in our brain somewhere, and then we create better habits that are more at the forefront of our mind. But it doesn't take much for the beast to find the key to the cellar and then open it up again. Do you want to comment on that?
Completely agree with my own experience and what I know about the neuroscience. Again, I had many experiences of stopping, restarting, same thing, how easy, that body memory goes right back there. And what I know from myself, again, I wasn't a big drinker in high school or college. Mm-hmm. And for me, it started, you've probably heard me tell this story on other podcasts, but in my late 20s, after a really heartbreaking breakup, like just gutted, fetal position, throwing up. I was so emotionally just gutted, and opened a bottle of wine in that heightened negative emotional state. And my, system was in that heightened kind of stress hormone place. And I drank that wine. I was like, why have I not drank before? Like, it just shut my brain off. And right there. And I think people need to be aware of that not everyone, has an addictive response to alcohol, but when you're in heightened emotional states, which a lot of us are, we drink emotionally or because of events, the body remembers it. And I think it's really hard to ever unremember that. Yeah. So I believe that very much, that like my nervous system response to alcohol, it's dormant right now in my nervous system, kind of like chickenpox or shingles. Once you have it, or chronic fatigue syndrome, it's dormant in the nervous system, in the spinal cord, but you can reactivate that virus. And that's how I believe. I don't have this day to day. It's not that life isn't hard. And it's not that, the first, first year, I felt like I really turned a corner at 9 months, but 18 months was hell. My second year was almost harder than, so it wasn't like, oh, I stopped drinking and then, life was just, it's this fabulous thing and everybody should do it. It's hard. But the farther away I've gotten from it, and things can still happen. I could hit the 3-year mark, life could happen to me. Yeah. But I knew when I made that decision, I knew what I was signing up for. I don't know what's going to happen in life, but I'm really resolute that alcohol's not an option. Now, I also know, coming up on the 3-year mark, the statistics say there's still a 30% chance for relapse or me to drink, or however you want to frame that. 3 years out, there's still a 30%. So it takes time to really get the nervous system rewired away from that.
I liked Aiden's metaphor of the marriage scene, marrying your, going into a deep relationship, like putting the ring on the finger of, I don't drink alcohol anymore. I really like that. I thought, because for me, like wedding vows are very, very serious. And one of the things that I've always struggled to coach and communicate to people is what I call the vow. So you said, Jolene, you tried many times before to stop, and then you started again, you stopped, you started again. But this one moment on December the 14th, 2014, you were just like, I am done. Something is different, and that is difficult to teach. How does that happen? Like, it's really difficult to teach, but I like the way that Aiden said the metaphor, like, I'm going to really make a commitment here to get married to the fact that I'm not going to drink. And like she said, marriages break up. We're never going to say that we will never drink again, because that could happen. But right now we're doing the work and we are really just getting on with life. And you just forget about it, don't you? It ends up all the way back there somewhere, but it does come back very, very quickly. So I can really see why people get so despondent when they go from, 10 days, 5 days, 100 days, 1,000 days, all the way back to 1. I don't always necessarily think it's the climb, the numbers of days. It's just that knowing and understanding that you're going to have a serious case of the fuck it's, and you're going to be on it for a week or 2 weeks. And then it's going to be more difficult to get back to where you were, because it's got hold of you again.
Yeah, and my knowing came because of the experiences of going back and forth.
Yeah, yeah.
They were really valuable because I'd
Yeah.
had that experience of kind of, in a sense, knowing what I'm signing up for, right? So I didn't get to December 14th, 3 years ago, saying like, oh, this is just a healthy choice I'm going to make. Like, I knew what I was signing up for, and it's a hard thing to sign up for.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew that and was ready. And then I have to say, and we can kind of go into this too, of what I also knew was I have to pull in my functional nutrition and the somatic work and some of the neuroscience, because this is where the rubber meets the road. So it wasn't like I just kind of jumped off a cliff and I was like, well, I hope, life doesn't just totally knock me down, because it does and it will. But it was actually having those resources that has really helped, because that was a big fear. I had two big fears. And the one was, what if just something catastrophic, out of the blue, unpredictable happens? Like I get the phone call in the middle of the night and I just can't handle it. Or that was my biggest fear. But now 3 years out, because of using tools and resources and everything that I've, worked just personally for myself and now share with clients, I feel stronger and more, able, that when the hard stuff comes, it's because of those tools. And I never would have had that feeling with alcohol.
And you're talking about it, which in itself is part risk assessment. I did a little risk assessment and said to myself, what are the things that are likely to trigger me to drink alcohol? And I wrote a list of them. And then one by one, I got rid of them out of my life. Like one would be, if there's alcohol in the house, I might drink. If something happens to me, I don't want alcohol in the house. If I go to the pub with my mates and they ask me to drink, I might want to drink. No, I ain't going to go to the pub. And the rules change depending on how confident I felt about my sobriety. And what I never put on there was, I'm going to get divorced, because it just didn't see it coming. So death, losing people, all that kind of stuff, it's really, really difficult. But what quitting alcohol does is it allows you to suddenly feel for the first time. So now and this is all, to me, it's not about the alcohol. It's just about living life, right? So all of a sudden now you're feeling suffering, pain, anxiety, shame, all these negative feelings that you've never had to deal with before. Well, deal with them. And as you deal with them, you get a little bit stronger. And then when this thing comes along that hits you, you're a stronger person than you ever used to be because of these feelings. Relapse, nobody wants it, right? Everybody just wants that clear run at never drinking again to the rest of your life. But if you do relapse and you don't do anything about it, you don't learn anything about it whatsoever, you don't interrogate why you relapsed, you don't do some root cause analysis to understand what triggered it. If you do none of that, it's a complete waste of time. If you do the work on it, however, it can be absolutely crucial to your long-term sobriety. Those relapses are such golden moments, like Jolene found out.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
And nutrition, okay, on the forum right now, everybody is talking about food. Nobody's talking about alcohol. Everyone's talking about food. I had Carla Marie on the podcast yesterday, talking about nutrition. I could talk about this all day, different points of view, different angles and stuff. What's the link here? Because when I quit drinking alcohol, I never thought to myself, oh, there's a link here to nutrition. Never, ever, ever. I knew I was eating a load of crap, but I never said to myself, this is why I'm eating crap. Why do I suddenly feel like I want to eat a lot of sugar? And none of those thoughts came up for me. So talk a little bit about your interest in nutrition and how it connects to alcohol.
I think there's a absolute connection with it. And it's the first place I went. And again, I was pretty quiet about this in this first year. So I was just kind of, made the decision and doing a lot of it on my own. But I had done a functional medicine training in 2006 around neurotransmitters, Gaba and serotonin and dopamine. So I had that understanding from the functional medicine standpoint. And that's what I pulled in, because the sugar and the alcohol run the same pathway in the brain and people switch. Basically, it's one or the other for people. There are people where it's food and sugar is their thing and they're not really drinkers, or alcohol is their thing and they're like, I don't really eat sugar, but then they quit one or the other, and all of a sudden they switch over. So we see that all the time. And what I'm really interested in then is the root of this biochemical root, the physical root. And so I go to the brain. There's hormones to look at, there's blood sugar, and we can talk all about that too. But my first place is particularly GABA. So I know for myself that my GABA is low. I have a history of just generalized anxiety. It's remarkably better that I haven't drank for 3 years, but it's a bit of my temperament, my constitution. And so I've understood that from the functional medicine side of things, and have been very influenced by, do you know Eric Braverman, the Edge Effect?
No.
A lot of people know of Julia Ross, the mood cure, the diet cure, which is great. And there's, other information as well from Eric Braverman. And so he breaks down in his book, and I'll use this with clients, a quiz of typing your GABA levels, your serotonin levels, dopamine, and acetylcholine. So I know my GABA is low, and I've also done urine tests to see that correlate as well. And then Eric Braverman has a protocol of looking at actual food, which is always going to be real food. You can never go wrong with real food. Almonds and steel-cut oats and salmon and broccoli and berries. And if it's real food, it's going to feed your brain. But there's particular foods that, for certain neurotransmitters even have kind of a higher nutrient component, like almonds are really, really good food, nut to boost your GABA. And then he'll talk about, different exercises to do. So particularly yoga. And we have the studies on it. Bessel van der Kolk in Massachusetts, he's the author of The Body Keeps the Score. And he can talk the science and the research about how GABA levels go up when we do yoga. Now, I'll argue, no, there's particular kinds of yoga and we can talk about that, about kind of the somatic yoga to invoke more of that stress response. But then we know things like dopamine to help kind of bring more balance to that, like alternate nostril breathing. Blocking off one nostril, breathing through the other helps to bring a little balance to the left and right hemisphere of the brain. Weightlifting. So it's all these things in health and wellness that we know about, we talk about, but then sometimes it's like, I don't have time for it. When you're working with brain chemistry balance, you need to have time for this. Right. Because it absolutely helps rewire things, bring things back in balance. So I honed in and was very committed to using some herbs to boost my GABA when I quit drinking. And I actually used something called Alpha Stim. Have you heard of that device?
No.
It's FDA approved for anxiety, depression, and insomnia. And I got it at the Functional Medicine Conference in 2006.
Alpha Stim.
Alpha Stim. So what it's doing is it's invoking the alpha state in the brain, those alpha brain waves, and it boosts neurotransmitters. And really, really good studies for depression, for anxiety, and it just helps that electrical current in the brain. So you attach little earlobe or little ear clips to your earlobes, and it has a 9-volt battery and just does a little electrical current, and it has a real calming effect.
Right.
And all their information's on their website. I'm not connected with them, no financial connection. But that's where I honed in for myself, especially those first 30 days, was to really work on boosting my GABA, because that's what I was using wine to do.
Can I ask you some questions on GABA then? So let's say I'm from the Welsh Valleys, which I am. I've just quit drinking alcohol. I know nothing about neurotransmitters. I know nothing about GABA. I live in a little valley of 3,000 people. We've got one doctor. That is it. Yeah. First question, I guess, is where do we go to have our GABA tested?
You can work with me. Eric Braverman's book, he has the quiz right in his book that you can download, and it'll type you as mild, moderate, or severe. So this is not like a special or unique thing. It's not like no one has neurotransmitter. We all do. It's just where we are on that spectum. Is it more of a mild deficiency, moderate, or severe? So
there's a questionnaire that you can fill in, but did you mention urine test as well? I mean, whenever I think about something like a neurotransmitter or hormones, I'm always thinking a blood test or a urine test or a hair test. And I know in the UK, if we go to the National Health Service and talk to our doctors about these things, they don't want to know. Like they don't. You have to go private. Could you provide some links or something later on? Maybe. I mean, people can go to the Eric Braverman site, work with yourself. But if they just wanted to just do a blood test and send it off somewhere, is that possible?
Yeah, so the thing with neurotransmitters, we actually tend to look at the urine because we're looking then to see how fast the body is dumping neurotransmitters. So like if you do a urine test and my GABA comes up really high, it means my body's dumping it really quickly.
Right.
Whereas we don't really get that in the blood test. So I don't do that type of testing. It's the functional medicine doctors, so the medical doctors, the naturopaths who are functionally, medicine kind of oriented.
Yeah.
Where I would direct people with that, if they actually want to have that test, is to go to the Institute of Functional Medicine website. I'm not sure. I think if there's UK links up there, definitely US doctors for every state. But I think that they might have some UK doctors. But I can back up and simplify this a little bit too, that you certainly don't have to run out and get a urine test. I can talk about just some foundational things to help just brain chemistry in general.
That would be great. I've got someone in mind. There's someone on my forum who doesn't seem to, he's not bollocking it down his throat, but he's got a problem with it. He doesn't want to drink and he just can't seem to get past the 7-day mark, right? So what can we do to help this guy? He's a vegan as well. Don't know if that matters, but what can we do to help this guy to just get over that 7 days to prepare his brain better?
Yeah. So backing it up again about just foundational nutrition that can really nourish and feed the brain. Some, really foundational things to do is eat on a regular basis. So don't skip meals, those first couple of days or weeks of no alcohol.
Can I ask a question on that very quickly?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I know this is one of my problems and one of the reasons why I'm getting sick right now. I'm taking too long. I'm hungry right now. I'm taking too long to eat, but there are sometimes I'm not hungry. What do you advise for someone who just isn't hungry and they're going too long between meals? Do you just eat?
So actually not being hungry is not a good thing, because what's happening is the cortisol, the stress hormone, is being dumped in the system because you haven't eaten. And in order to keep your blood pressure up, your heartbeat going, your blood sugar up because you haven't eaten food. And so cortisol goes up there, even though you haven't eaten, and then insulin goes up, and then you don't feel hungry because the body has just been signaled you're in this stress response because you don't know where you're going to eat again.
Right.
And so that's actually not a good thing. Like, you actually want to feel hungry every 4 to 5 hours. Okay. Metabolically, things are just kind of working better that way. So as far as what to eat, even if it's just some almonds, because we know that almonds are really good for GABA. Right. So, or some nut butters like peanut butter or cashew butter. Ideally, I'd love to have people eat more mini meals. It doesn't have to be a huge plate, but if you have leftovers from the night before, simplify it. You don't have to, go cook a full meal, but just heat up some leftovers from the night before, or a quick sandwich just on, one slice of bread, do some turkey, some avocado, make up some tuna salad, some egg salad, like things that you can kind of have on hand. It doesn't have to be a huge serving. Yeah. But, and I notice too, I'm cueing protein, the egg salad, the tuna salad. It doesn't have to be animal protein, but a protein source, especially when you wake up from, a night of sleep, can really, really help the brain.
Okay. I kind of hijacked you then. So what you're saying is you're just about to start lading yourself up with GABA, increasing food, so foods that increase your GABA, and eat regularly and consistently over time.
Yeah, because often now too, blood sugar is really erratic because, if we've been drinking alcohol, it's sugar. So that those sugar molecules from the alcohol are in the bloodstream. Sugar goes up, the body's got to pull that sugar out. So then sugar comes down, and then we want, either to drink again or eat something sugary. And we're on this sugar roller coaster, even if we don't feel hungry. And so let's say, someone drank last night, and today they're like, okay, today's my day one. The best thing you can do is eat on a real regular basis that day and that full week, like every 3 hours or so, because it'll keep your blood sugar stable, which will starve off some cravings, and it'll feed your brain, which will feed those neurotransmitters. So I know it doesn't sound really glamorous and exciting, but honestly, eating on a regular basis can really, really help your neurotransmitters in your brain.
Yeah, and I can be the guinea pig here and testify to this, because I recently developed hypothyroid, started to get really ill. And one of the reasons that was pointed out to me was I would wake up in the morning, I would have a hot lemon water with apple cider vinegar and turmeric. I would make my smoothie, but my smoothie was this big. And then I would not eat until and this, like, let's say this is like 10 o'clock in the morning. I then wouldn't eat till 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
And then I would just have something small. And then I was getting starving hungry 11, 12 o'clock at night.
Right.
So I still haven't cracked it, but my problem is I don't really have a lot I can eat. That's my problem. The counter problem that I want to ask you a question on is people will be listening to this who are just thinking about quitting drinking or have quit drinking. And I would say the high percentage of them have a diet which consists of processed food, stuff that you pull out of the freezer, stuff you stick in the microwave, tins, cans. You know, people think they're doing well and they're eating healthily, but everything is just covered in sugar and stuff. Right. What happens if someone just starts eating regularly, but they're eating all the wrong stuff?
Well, so there's a couple ways to go about this. You could actually, and I recommend this for smokers a lot from the Craving Brain, is actually start this eating process before you quit.
Right.
Because sometimes, and there's an argument for the first month or first couple of weeks, don't necessarily worry about the food. And then there's certainly an argument of the food can actually really support you and be beneficial. For me, it's kind of about the person. It really depends. I think there's an argument to go either way with that. But I was trying to think what else I wanted to say on that. I had something else, but
it will come back. What you're saying there is a little bit like what we were talking about earlier on. Don't focus on the alcohol because that is going to be really complicated and difficult. Let's focus on something else which can build up your strength and your ability to then go and deal with the alcohol.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
I love that idea. I've especially with the food kind of, because what happens, people say things like, people say to me, yeah, but Lee, you're one of these people who are an all or nothing person, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, but what does that really mean? Do you know what I mean? It's like, I think people shouldn't take on too much. And I often see people who have just quit drinking for a couple of days, and now they're eating 6 or 7 donuts a night, and they're saying, well, I need help quitting the sugar thing. And I'm thinking, no, you don't. Just keep eating sugar for the moment. Do whatever you need to do to distance yourself away from the alcohol, if that's how you've begun. So if you've begun quitting alcohol, it might be difficult to just go vegan. It might be difficult to just cut out all sugar. So we can do what Jolene's saying, but do it smart. Like, it depends how screwed up your diet is. Like, take it. I remember saying to my mum once, she said, well, I eat healthy. And I'm like, Mum, come here a minute. And I took her into her kitchen and pointed everything out that was really bad for her. And she said, well, I won't be able to eat anything. I said, okay. What's going to happen if you could never eat baked beans again? Nothing. Okay, let's just stop buying tins of baked beans. Just one thing. Yeah. See how you feel about not having any beans. And then we'll move on to the next thing and the next thing, So I think it's real. I love what you say, that people, ideally, if you're going at this in a real kind of constructive, business-like fashion, and I don't know why more people don't, to be honest, people just wing it, don't they, 9 times out of 10. If you're saying to yourself, right, I'm going to quit alcohol, how do we do this? I love what Jolene said about strengthening your body first and picking on food. So
a couple things to this. I think we have to be careful not to, and our brains can do this because of, having low Gaba, having our dopamine, and can get into this fixated state of, now I'm going to fix everything and just, heal myself, and coming from that standpoint of, because something's wrong with me and I'm not in a goods, that can get to be a real obsessive, place. And so I think we want to be careful about that. The objective is not like, something's wrong and we've got to fix everything and do it all tomorrow.
Yeah.
And again, there can be a real argument for picking up, the sugar kind of whole food eating, maybe in 30 days. And then it's always like, what's your why? Like, what's your objective? Is it to literally just keep your blood sugar balanced? Because that like you have low blood sugar and real strong cravings. So like, if that's the why, then it's like, okay, knowing that's your objective, the commitment maybe for 30 days is eat every 4 hours. But if it's just like, I'm just going to, go vegan and no sugar and no alcohol, why are you doing this? And we have to be careful about that. But there is the other side of this that, have you heard the book, 7 Weeks to Sobriety?
I've got it. I haven't read it, but that's the one where there's a lot of medication as well?
It's pretty nutrition based and based on,
it may be a different one I'm thinking about then.
So it's written by a woman. She has a PhD in nutrition. And it was a treatment center in Minneapolis. I don't know if it opened in the 80s or 90s maybe. That was their whole philosophy of bringing in problem drinkers, addicts, alcoholics. And for the first really 2 weeks, they focused on the physiology. They got minerals into their body. They got amino acids into their body, fish oil, the good healthy fat. And then started doing more of the cognitive, like, why am I doing what I'm doing, and trying to figure that out. Because when we don't feel well physically, it's hard to kind of deal with things emotionally. So there can be a real argument for going after the physical, but I just think it's individual and where you are when you have day one.
I concur. I mean, people are probably sick of me saying this because I keep waffling on in all my podcasts, but people do get themselves stuck in this. Let's do a ketogenic diet. Let's do an Atkins diet. I've just read this book. I just read that book. No, go and see someone like Jolene. Go and see someone like Carla. Go and see an expert and let them focus on you, because all our bodies are different. Like, I would never have known, like, for example, you're just talking about almonds. I'm not supposed to eat almonds, right? Because I have a real difficulty. My body has a difficulty dealing with my fats. And even healthy fats, right? I don't know what the answer is to that yet, but I would never have known that. I was drinking almond milk by the bucket load. I was eating avocado. I was eating 2 avocados a day. I was using a lot of olive oil. And then someone comes along and goes, whoa, your particular body right now is having a problem dealing with that kind of stuff, All right, so we're all different. So really think about that, folks, yeah? Really, I know what it is, right? Most of you listening to this are working class. Most of you haven't got any money. Most of you are in debt. Most of you are thinking, most of you aren't even the purse string holders of the money in your house. So you've got a problem because you've got this secret that you're drinking too much and you don't want to tell anyone, particularly your husband. You're not quite sure how to speak to him about it. Now you want to go and have sessions with Jolene. You want to do my training course, blah, 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 blah. How can you do that? Because you're looking to this other person to give you money. I tell you what, folks, I'm on my soapbox. It's a soapbox moment. Normally, it's the woman who is looking to the man to provide. Normally. Don't all women shout at me now, but normally. And that's just happened in my relationship right now. 10-month-old kid, me and Liza both worked. We made a family decision that it's better that Liza looks after our child while I work. We just made that decision. She's breastfeeding. It just makes sense. Biologically, it makes sense. It's nothing to do with sexism. It makes sense. And we can't hide away from the numbers. That will happen the majority of civilized society. Okay? However, if you're in that situation, do not lose your potential to earn your own money. Don't let a guy or a woman be the purse string holders of your future, because you are fucked if you do that, because you cannot have a life and you end up getting so small that we turn to red wine, we turn to vodka, we turn to whiskey. Learn somehow to get a little bit of money for yourself so you can make yourself right and be the great role model so everybody else can look. You need money. You cannot do this. You can do it without money, but it's very, very complicated, very, very difficult, and very time consuming. Right, I'm off my soapbox.
So I love that you went there. And because, one of my soapboxes is, as a nutritionist, it's not all about food. Food's interesting. It's fascinating. Yes, I love it, and it makes a big difference, but it's not the end all be all. I know a lot of people who eat really well, and they are not necessarily, air quote, healthy, right? So it's the big picture, and you alluded to it, like money. We don't like to talk about that, but it's directly impacted. Like if we're worrying about, paycheck to paycheck, and who cares about organic vegetables?
Yeah.
And I'll talk about this all the time when I teach. And so, yes, broccoli's nourishing. Yes, salmon, good healthy fats. And we all have individual biochemistry. So there's not like just a set menu plan. And there's so many emotions connected with food. But it's the bigger picture. And, when we look at like people who live to be 100, and there are societies, there's one in Pennsylvania that's been studied, which is really fascinating, where they actually drink whiskey. They eat fried food. Like they're not eating vegetables, but they're very, very healthy. They don't have heart disease. They don't have cancer. They don't have addiction. But what they have is community and the social support and really close, spiritual connections and the downtime and the leisure. Like when we look at Mediterranean cultures, as Americans, everyone's kind of relaxation area is always often depleted. And these things nourish us and feed us just as much as the food. So I love that you went there with the money, because it's not, and we can get really obsessed about like the perfect menu plan. And even though I talk to people all the time about nutrition, it's not always, the end all be all. There's a bigger picture to what nourishes us. And I can talk about some whole food specifics too, if you want.
I'm going to chuck a few more questions at you first. We just covered Gaba. So we pretty much covered Gaba. And if anyone's got any questions on Gaba, just ask and Jolene will answer them, I'm sure. Dopamine. So just quit drinking. I assume that's going to affect our dopamine levels quite considerably. What can we do to replenish those stocks to make ourselves feel good in replacing alcohol in those early stages?
Yeah. So here's the problem with dopamine. So we all have baseline levels of dopamine, but then let's say like, it's 100, just for an arbitrary level, that 100 is the baseline level. But then let's say that I put alcohol in my body, and all of a sudden my dopamine receptors light up and go to like 200. You're like, ooh, and my dopamine, that felt good. That was, that pleasure, that comfort. Or I put cocaine in my body and then they bump up to 500, or crystal meth, or, gambling. So all of those hits makes dopamine light up. The problem is then the brain says, wait a minute, we were never biologically designed to walk around with a 700 level of dopamine.
Right.
Like we can't function like that. So then the body either goes into overdrive to pull that dopamine out, or it stops, or it doesn't completely stop, but that's how it's making. So then we get into this low dopamine state, and then we don't feel well, and then we are chasing that fix. I want that drink. I want that hit. So that's the problem with dopamine. And whole food is one of the best things with it. Actually, exercise gives us a bit of that natural dopamine hit that doesn't boost it into, dangerous levels.
Yeah.
So it goes back to just basic wellness pieces. Regulated breathing can really help dopamine levels and help the brain. But again, when that dopamine is low and we want that hit, that's where it gets really, really hard to say no to the wine or whatever it may be. And that's why it's not a psychological kind of willpower weakness. There's something, with a personality, it's a physiology. And that's why I always want to go and work with the brain and the body first.
I think there's something that's cropped up in my mind that could be useful for people is, killing 2 birds or 3 birds or 4 birds with one stone, right? So good example there by Jolene, to keep your dopamine levels at a good, balanced, as the brain should, as we should need them as human beings level, not an exaggerated cocaine-induced level. Exercise, okay? But what's one of the other things that we talked about earlier on, or Jolene mentioned, is community. So we're in this situation where we feeling small, we're ashamed, we're not ready to talk to anyone about it yet because we think people will ridicule us, because let's be honest, everybody drinks alcohol and everybody's fine with drinking alcohol, and here I come along and I have a problem with it. But I don't really have a problem because I'm only drinking 4 bottles of wine a week, and problem is I'm underneath a bridge somewhere drinking out of a brown paper bag. So you feel useless and worthless, so you retreat. You don't really talk to anybody. Even if you have friends, it's surface level bullshit. You ain't connecting, right? So exercise, you're not connecting, go and join a tennis club, go and join a badminton club, go and join a ping pong club, go and do what some of the community forum members at Strive are doing, join walking groups, right? Why? Because now you're exercising, but you're also talking to people and you're having a community, and you might just like one person in the tennis, but now you've got one extra person you can talk to, right? I only need 3. I was reading a book the other day that said we're only capable, I think it was Yuval Noah Harari in Homo Deus, you're only capable of 150 deep connections. 150? God, give me more than 3 and it'll do my head in. So go out. Don't just, they work different for different people. James on in Strive, James jumps on his bike and just goes for it. Yeah. Eileen, she just likes kind of going out on a walk with people. So it's different for different people, but you will need community, you will need connection, and you will need exercise. So I just wanted to jump in and say that. Anything on that before I go on to my next point?
The only thing I'll add to community is, from a neuroscience standpoint, why it helps the nervous system. So I know, I don't know as much with your community, but there can be different opinions about things like AA or recovery groups. But I can tell you the neuroscience of why being in those communities, why being face-to-face, whether it's refuge recovery or AA or a yoga, class or whatever, when you can see somebody in person, like right now, you and I, the screen is between us.
Yeah.
But when you're actually in person in the same room with someone, and that eye contact, the vocal tone, what that does is it calms the polyvagal nerve in the brain, just more kind of fancy anatomy. But the polyvagal nerve is part of that kind of fight, flight, or freeze response. And same with the amygdala. And when those parts of the brain are hypervigilant and stuck on, there's different ways to regulate those parts of the brain. And one of them is community. The vocal tone, the eye contact, there's many things to do, but that's why I really, really encourage clients. I don't care which community, I don't have an attachment or, with any or the other, but I absolutely agree with you, Lee, of getting face-to-face contact. It helps your nervous system regulate and not feel so dysregulated where then you want to reach for the drink.
I came to this place in Los Angeles. I'm in Santa Clarita at the moment, and I brought my son here a couple of years ago. And my boy, we pulled up outside the house that we're in now, and he looked around and he said, God, Dad, this is the life. This is where I want to live. He said, look at the pavements are just perfect. He kept going on about the pavements. There's no trash anywhere. It's perfect. Now, to paint a little picture for you, probably in an house which is probably circa $100 million. It's a pool in the back. It's perfect. It's huge, right? After this podcast, I'm going to go for a walk around. I'm in the suburbs. I'm going to go for a walk. It's 100 degree. Nobody. I won't see anybody. It's like Freddy Krueger came and killed all the kids. There's nothing. There's no noise. There's nothing apart from the occasional crow desperate for some water, right? And it destroys me.
Yeah.
It destroys me because if I'm not speaking to Jolene right now, I'm just in front of my computer working, and there's nobody to connect to. All of the money, all of the materialist nonsense, it's nothing. It's not what we need. We really need to connect with people. And I never really thought about it like Jolene just said. At the Strive Community Forum, we don't see each other. We have built up some beautiful relationships, but we do need more. We do need to go out there, and we do need to find like-minded people in the flesh that we can spend time and connect with. Just sit down and just be who you are, like the real you. which we only really find out who that is when we stop drinking, right?
Yeah, and so, this is interesting to me of when we look at different societies or tribes or communities over the history of planet Earth, there's hard times. Like human life is hard. But why is it that, and this is some of the trauma, conversation of trauma happens, but just because we're exposed to trauma doesn't mean we're necessarily traumatized. And the pieces that play into that then is the environment. And are we in environments that can soothe us, that can make us feel seen and safe and secure? And this is Gabor Mate's work. Are you familiar with Gabor Mate?
Yeah.
So Gabor Mate is big on environment. And that can be everything that, you're talking about, just being outside in nature, like the environment of trees. There's really interesting research, water, ocean, the environment of where you're working, the people you're surrounding yourself with, especially early on, those environments. And this is where the neuroscience is saying that depending on the environment, that's then what trips our genes to either go into these hypervigilant stress response, these anxious responses, these responses where we kind of get stuck on. And then we want to pay attention to that. Is somebody stuck in a flight place, where they want to like flee, or in a fight mechanism, or are they just frozen? And so then when we start to work with these different tools and these components, we want to be really aware of what is the nervous system stuck in. And what then we pull in to support that is environmental pieces that can be really supportive to not people feeling so frozen or like they want to run all the time, or drink all the time. So environment is huge. Did
you read the book Blue Zones?
I know of it. I haven't actually read it cover to cover, but I know it. And that's some of this information.
Yeah, it's on my Kindle. It wasn't one that really grabbed me, but the logic behind it is sound. I mean, you could be really lazy and just go, right, okay, we're going there to live. Like for people listening, blue zones are certain areas around the world where people are living until they're 100 or 100 plus, something like that. So why are these people living until they're a century? Well, because they do all these different things, and community is part of that. One thing I want to say about environment, it's a little bit of a soapbox moment again, and then I'm going to talk to Jolene about something else. But please remember, as tough as it is, that your environment, you're there through choice. Pause there. You're there for choice. You don't have to be there. You can be anywhere. But you need to get through the fear of change. Okay. You need to, and believe you me, because I've been through it plenty, the fear is all that's preventing you. The actual change, there's nothing to it. It's nothing to it. You move from A to B, and once you're in B, you're there. It's the thought of moving that drives you insane and keeps you stuck. It's the thought of leaving your wife that keeps you stuck. Once you've left your wife, once you've left your house, suddenly you will be completely different. You'll be look back and think, hang on a minute, I'm actually enjoying this. But it was the fear that prevented you. So many people, me included, got stuck in a situation that was very, very toxic for you. A relationship or a home or a job that was so toxic, it drove you to anxiety and stress because you knew deep down that you were living a lie, that you were wasting your life in these three areas, doing something you didn't really want to do, and it didn't sit well with you because you couldn't break free of it. Yeah, you can break free of it. And if you do, the rewards are amazing. They really are, but you have to go through a bit of pain to get there first. Well, a lot of pain, but yeah, environment. I'm just saying that because I know so many people here will be the trifecta of hell. I just made that one up. It will be a relationship, a job, or where you live.
Yep.
Anything on that before I move on?
What I would add to that is this isn't I agree with you. And it's that same question of, is this nourishing? Does this feed me? Does this environment nourish me?
Yeah, I like that.
And then it's not always a cognitive, like I just need to be stronger and I need more willpower. And then it goes back to the body, and especially in the amygdala, that fear center. So if, there's been a situation really who hasn't been through something where they feel overwhelmed and that inability to cope or kind of freeze in the moment, the amygdala remembers that. And so that's where then I bring in, more of the wellness pieces of helping the body feel calm, because it's not an intellectual trying to be like, I just need to pull myself up from my bootstraps and move. The body needs to feel calm and safe and secure in order for us to then take the action. So that comes into a little bit more of the yoga somatic work I do.
Yeah, no, I like that. I'm very much psychologically, right? That's what's worked for me. What I'm learning is there's a huge part of this as well. This is why I've got you on here and I've had Carla on here, and why everyone's talking about food is this way of nourishing our body so we can heal ourselves. So, there's a psychology here, there's the brain work, there's a nutrition, the whole kind of gamut. And this is why these podcasts are so great, because you can get so many different people from so many different fields. Talk about amino acids. I'm taking amino acid tablets right now. Somebody's told me to take them because there's something wrong with me. I'm so bad. Like people will tell me what's wrong with me and I won't care. I'm just like, just tell me what I need to take. So I don't even know why I'm taking them. But so talk about amino acids a little bit.
So amino acids are in protein. When we eat protein, animal protein or plant protein, they break down into amino acids. And amino acids are important because they're the building blocks for every cell in our body, for our muscles and organs and tissues and cells. And our body is constantly breaking down, rebuilding, especially when we're under stress and in kind of a hypervigilant stress mode that we're trying to regulate and use a substance. So the body then breaks down even more, and it needs amino acids to rebuild. So like the lining in our intestinal tract, we have a new set of cells every 3 days. If I scratch my eyeball right now, it'll regenerate in 24 hours. If I cut off a piece of my liver, in 7 months, comes back. We have a new set of bones every 7-9 years. So the body's looking for amino acids, not wine or M&Ms. It's looking for the amino acids to literally rebuild. And the amino acids are key building blocks for the brain, for the Gaba, which is that calming neurotransmitter, same with serotonin, and for the dopamine to just help bring that back into balance. So amino acids, kind of going back, I know when we first talked nutrition, I went a little high level, but just, even people on a budget and if it's, sounds too overwhelming, the best thing you can do is when you eat some protein, animal protein or plant protein. Don't split hairs over, getting really obsessive about it. Just get some protein where you can, what fits with your convenience, your budget, and your routine. Eat protein.
Right. So I could see now that I was probably given amino acids because I went vegan and then I didn't do it very well and I just wasn't eating enough protein, probably. Kind of guessing there. There's a lot of other things going on with my gut as well, but that would definitely be a big one.
Yeah. So that's protein. The other thing is healthy fats that are really, really important. Primarily omega-3 fats, fish oil. But if people don't eat fish, then you can do like more of an algae, source of that. You can also do flax seeds or chia seeds, walnuts, walnut oil or walnuts themselves are all really high in omega-3 fats. Omega-3 fats are the raw materials that make the neurotransmitters. So these are the things where it's like, eat healthy. I don't have time for it. And again, it doesn't have to be expensive, but, where you can, like, eat some walnuts. That's good omega-3 fats. It feeds the brain. It's really important. And then the third category is carbohydrates. And there's 3 categories. There's the fruits and vegetables. You can't go wrong with vegetables. Any, all, whatever, seasonal, colorful, whatever vegetables you like, as much as you can, get vegetables in. The second category is all the starchy, bready, pasta, potatoes, which most people, when you say, what are carbohydrates, that's what they say. And the third category is the alcohol, the desserts, the candy, the sweet treats. Ideally, we're not eating as much of those, depending on the person, the goal, the outcome, where you want to limit that. but really amping up the vegetables, and then the starch, depending on, again, your own biochemistry, what your goal is, what your outcome is. But those are the three categories: protein, healthy fats, and carbohydrates.
And we're coming back to what Jolene said, and I want to highlight it, your own biochemistry. So everybody knows, right, that eating fruits and vegetables is good. Everybody knows that. We've been taught it since you was a little kid. However, I'm not allowed to eat goitrogens right now. So I'm not allowed to eat broccoli, kimchi, which I love, and I was using it because I thought it was really good for me. Kale, especially raw, right? But that's just me right now and not forever. And that's because right now I'm out of whack and I need to get back in whack. But I'm not going to get back in whack if I just read a book that tells me generically to take all these things, which goes back to send Jolene an email and work with her. Send Carla an email and work with her. You know, really get this down individual to see what you are lacking and what you need, because everybody will be different. Everybody will.
Yeah. People ask me all the time. They'll be like, are carrots good or bad? Is butter good or bad? And I'm like, whole food is not bad. You're never going to hear me demonize whole food. Yeah. Now, depending on what your goal is, what's going on with your labs, your thyroid, your biochemical individuality, different foods can be more supportive on what you're trying to kind of bring into balance. But whole food, you just can't go wrong. And we've gotten further and further away from eating whole food. That, you know, the things, if somebody wants to like nail me down to demonize, you know, air quote, something bad, I'm going to go after artificial sweeteners because they deplete serotonin and shut off kind of that, I'm satisfied, I'm full, I can sleep. Artificial sweeteners mess with the brain. Trans fats. So anytime, eating something that's been fried in hot, bubbling oil, and it turns into that hydrogenated fat, and high fructose corn syrup. So those are kind of, where I'm going to say, and then everything else, it really depends, like I've said many, many times, on the person, but whole food is going to feed your brain.
And Eleni in our forum yesterday when I interviewed Carla Marie, Eleni asked me to ask Carla a question. I'm going to ask you the same question. Should people completely abstain from sugar?
Ideally, yes, I think it's very healthful to do that. Realistically, and again, what kinds of sugars are we talking about? So, getting the sugars from fruits, I think that's a great way to go. Getting sugar tarts, that's going to be harder to argue. And it's hard to just do a blanket statement of stop eating sugar, because we have to look at other things. We have to look at the emotions, what we're really trying to, where the sweetness isn't showing up in our life, and what's dysregulated with blood sugar, with hormones, with brain chemicals. But to just say, I'm going to quit eating sugar, it usually doesn't last. It's
going to be difficult. I think, jump in, Jolene, if I'm wrong here, but what we're talking about here is giving advice that the primary advice here, everybody is different. Seek professional advice and really nail down what your biochemistry needs, right? So we're giving that advice out. The other advice we're giving out is some generic kind of like, you can't really go wrong with whole foods as long as you're doing this individual testing as well, kind of thing. But the other advice I guess we're giving is, or I am anyway, don't know about you, you can just jump in if you want. The other advice is, there are some foods we don't want to balance. We shouldn't really want to balance fried food. It's just no good. We shouldn't want to balance alcohol because it's just poisonous, and we can get whatever alcohol gives us somewhere else. We shouldn't want to balance sugar because we can get that from somewhere else. Look, here's the thing, folks. Because I don't eat sugar, I can reliably tell you that if I have a peach or a grape, it is as sweet as having a cake, right? Our mind, our brain, our addict is telling us that it isn't, because it doesn't want you to move away from the cake. But I never ever feel an urge to eat loads and loads and loads of grapes and peaches. But I always feel an urge to go and eat a load of cake. And that should be telling enough, right?
It's dopamine. So what I was talking before about those dopamine receptors, they light up. Sugar has a huge dopamine response, and sugar has a very high addictive quality to it because of the dopamine brain chemistry.
I don't know if you found this, Jolene, but I get people in the forum, and maybe it's because I talk about this. I've quit everything: gambling, pornography, meat, dairy, alcohol, smoking, drugs. I've done the lot, done it all psychological. The hardest one, sugar, by a mile.
Yeah.
By a mile. I know we're coming up to the end of our 90 minutes. Just want to ask you one more question, if that's okay. Why is yoga important? Because people kind of like us, people who are trying to be healthy, the world mocks us. Journalists mock us. I read newspapers and articles, these do-gooders who do their yoga and drink their smoothies and don't drink alcohol. It really pisses me off, right? But why is yoga good for you, other than the stereotypical, let's quit alcohol, have a juice, meditate, and do yoga?
Yeah. Yoga is a real practical tool for helping us regulate the nervous system. And it can, this is where I would recommend people look to, is some of these tools, as opposed to kind of intellectually try to, get on top of things like sugar. Start with these tools to calm, balance, and regulate your nervous system. And then sugar isn't such a, big monster.
Right.
So this is some of the neuroscience and the somatic experiencing work. So I mentioned Bessel van der Kolk, been very influenced by him. I've done some trainings with him, and also Peter Levine. And I just finished a somatic yoga training in LA this spring. And it was a lot of the somatic work from Peter Levine. And so the idea behind it is resourcing the body. So we don't need to like self-analyze and, strengthen the prefrontal cortex. We need to calm the amygdala and that fight, flee, and freeze response of the brain. And the way to then practically do that is some of these body techniques, which can be yoga. And so, for instance, there's kind of 3 resourcing techniques that I'll guide clients through. And the first is, so like, Lee, are your feet on the floor right now?
Yeah, they are now.
Yeah. So just notice the sensation as your feet touch the ground. And notice if there's any gripping or maybe tingling. And just bring your attention. What? I'm sorry?
It's cold.
Cold? Yeah. Just bring your attention as your feet touch the ground. And then notice the butt in the chair and how the chair is holding you. And see if anything in your body is clenching or gripping. So people will talk about being grounded, like to kind of ground our energy. The way to actually, in a practical way, do that is whatever part of your body at any time is touching the ground, bring your attention there and just notice the sensation. The second thing is orienting. So if you just kind of look around, look up, look to the right, look to the left, what colors you might see in your environment, any textures. When we get anxious and frantic, we're looping in the past or we're projecting in the future. And we'll hear talking about like being present, being now. And the way to do that is to come to our senses. So visually, just, I can see this lamp on my desk. Do I smell anything? Do I hear anything? What's, touching my skin? So coming to the senses, because the senses are what trigger us. Like if we smell the chocolate chip cookie or, hear the sound of like the bar or the pub, that sense triggers our body. It's not an intellectual thing. So you want to orient to present time. And another way to do that is like to hold a soft gaze on an object, because our eyes will dart around if we're really nervous and anxious, looking for something to attach to, something to calm us down, attached to the glass of alcohol. But if we can use our visual sense to just calm, gives the nervous system the message, we're okay right now. We're not in this life or death situation. And then the third thing is centering. So bringing your palm either to your heart center or your belly center. People have a different sense of that. So grounding, orienting, and centering. And then with yoga, we use these cues. So as you're standing in mountain pose on your mat, notice what it feels like as your feet are on the ground. And then when you step back, or let's bend forward like into a forward pose with a flat back, notice that transition. Did your mind just go somewhere? Bring it back and notice if there's any gripping in your body. And then what happened with your breath? So this is how I would cue a somatic yoga class. And the language can be different. So in a regular yoga class, they might say in forward fold, level 1 people stay with your hands on your thighs, level 2 people, hands on your shins. Well, then my mind just went, I don't want to be, I want to be level 1, like I'm advanced, and what's wrong with me, and how do I look, and and I just completely went into my mind. So when I'm teaching yoga, I want to keep you in your body. So notice as your hands are on your thighs, if you want to play with a little more sensation here, notice what it feels like as your hands touch your shin. What just happened with your breath? Did your mind just go somewhere? Can you feel the ground underneath you as you just shifted that pose? And what this teaches, this type of yoga, is it starts to train the nervous system. Now I'm in a meeting on Thursday afternoon, and there was a real, heated discussion. Can I notice my feet on the ground? And did I just grip? What happened? Can I let my breath do what it knows to do, to not kind of get pulled into that and freeze, like as that, conversation's going on. And then at 5 o'clock, I just need to, I froze all that energy and now I need to go drink. Does that make sense? We'll talk about what you do on the mat is what we do off the mat, but we want to do some body training to teach our body how to regulate as we transition moment to moment, and how to keep our breath with us, and those different pieces. So those my clients will I'll take them through. I did it really fast, but I'll take them through that grounding, centering, orienting, and as we work together, they'll always report back. That has been so helpful.
It felt really good just listening to you. I mean, I'm definitely going to try out somatic yoga. Do you? I know you obviously do it live, but do you do it online as well?
I haven't been. I need to. I'm kind of trying to figure that out right now of how to do.
So. I think that would work. Yeah, that would work. I'd join your class.
All right.
Definitely.
Well, and I rushed you through it, so I'm glad to know that you felt a little shift. But
no, I did. I liked it because I know for a fact that I'm one of those people who my nervous system is all over the place. I'm just 100 miles an hour just trying to save the world, and I need to learn to calm. And then that's a lot of the issues that I'm having, at the moment. So I just need to kind of slow down. I like yoga when I'm there. I just have to get there. So that's
So this is the somatic languaging and kind of technique. It's not necessarily that you just show up at a yoga class and you'll hear those type of cues. You're looking for either it'll be titled stress reduction yoga or trauma informed yoga or somatic yoga. So looking for those teachers, but circling way back to the beginning when you were talking about, do I think about drinking now, and kind of that resolute decision. These are the kinds of things for me that have helped me not, my initial fear was, what if something really awful happens in my life? But it's been knowing now that I have some of these tools and resources that I don't just feel like I'm kind of, throwing myself off a cliff and hope it'll all be okay. Because these tools really help me.
I can think of quite a few people in the forum who would definitely be able to use these tools, and it would mean a great deal to them. Jolene, thank you for your time. It's been good to see a face, because I listened to your podcast. It's always a bit weird then, isn't it, when you speak to somebody? I'll be continuing to listen to it and sharing it with the forum. I'll be sending people over to your website. I will be making sure that people work with you and take advantage of all this wealth of experience that you have. More importantly, you've been through the mill, right? You were drinking, you was on the spectrum, it was problematic, you've stopped, now you're helping people. That means a great deal to people when they're trying to change other areas of their life, because they feel like people really understand them, And so I really want to thank you for your time. I've really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you. I appreciate all your support and having me on, and thank you so much. It's been great.